Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The day Earth went to war when aliens targeted our defenseless. And regretted it. The first strike in the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars burned quiet and cold, fell on a peaceful colony called Avra. A place where families from many different species lived together in harmony, trading stories, goods, and dreams under the gentle light of twin suns. Unaware that their silence and innocence had already made them a target for something cruel lurking in the dark, they had no warning before the colony could even finish its morning routines or children could finish their lessons. A massive fleet appeared in the sky like a shadow swallowing the light. Black ships shaped like blades cut through the atmosphere, descending fast and without mercy. They belonged to the Varnak, a war-loving alien species that hunted easy prey and took pleasure in attacking the weak. They did not demand surrender, nor did they offer terms, because to them it was not war, it was a sport, and the people below were nothing more than helpless pieces in a game they had already won. As the first explosions ripped through the colony's central communication hub and power grid, everyone was left in shock and panic. Mothers held their children close, doctors screamed for supplies, and defenders rushed to their old, outdated weapons, knowing deep inside that they would not be enough to stop what was coming, but choosing to fight anyway, because giving up was not an option when everything they loved stood behind them. From the skies, red fire rained down, burning buildings, ships, and shelters, while the Varnak soldiers landed with terrifying precision, moving through the colony like a plague, capturing survivors, destroying data corridors, and silencing any voice that dared cry out for help. Any voice, except one. Inside a crumbling medical ship half buried under the rubble of the blast, a child named Lyra, barely 10 years old, with a broken arm and dust in her lungs, crawled toward a cracked console where she remembered her mother once sent a message to Earth, their distant ally. With trembling fingers, she pressed the emergency beacon and whispered with all the strength she had left, "Please help us. They are killing everyone." The signal carried on a narrow-band quantum string, traveling faster than light across star systems and through the emptiness of deep space, until it reached Earth's hidden listening post buried deep beneath the ice of Europa's moon, where a single technician sat in silence, drinking cold coffee, until the monitor beeped once, and changed everything. Within minutes, red alerts blinked across secure channels, encrypted messages jumped between military satellites, and deep within Earth's Defense Command, the highest-ranking officials gathered around a table, listening to LRA's recording in complete silence. Their faces were stone, their eyes burning with restrained fury, as the voice of one innocent child became the trigger for something unstoppable. There was no public announcement, no warning to the Galactic Council, and no explanation broadcast to the galaxy, because Earth had learned long ago that in the void between stars, words meant nothing without strength, and justice without action was just another form of betrayal. From the shadowed side of the moon, massive warships began to rise, silent giants armed with weapons that no one had seen before, powered by energy sources kept secret since the last Great War. Each ship carried the flag of Earth, not as a symbol of pride, but as a promise of retribution. Commanders in dark uniforms stood on the bridges of those ships, watching their fleets assemble with precision. Their faces were cold, but their hearts burned with the memories of every child like Lyra, every scream that had gone unanswered, and every cowardly act that had been ignored by those who claimed to be protectors of peace but turned their eyes away when evil struck the weak. The humans did not speak to the Council, did not call the Varnak to warn them, and did not try to negotiate peace, because the time for talks had passed the moment the helpless were attacked. Now, only action remained, the kind that came in the form of plasma, steel, and vengeance on distant worlds. Whispers began to spread as smugglers and spies reported strange movements in space, ghost ships vanishing and reappearing near Varnak territory, strange signals jamming communication lines. Those who understood the pattern feared what it meant, because only one species moved like that, only one responded without delay, and only one had earned a name no empire wanted to hear: humans. As the stars watched in silence, something terrifying and beautiful unfolded. Earth, once quiet and distant, once seen as a minor force in the galaxy, was now awakened with fury, not to conquer, not to expand, but to defend what others had abandoned, to protect those who were too small to matter to the powerful, and to show the galaxy that even one cry for help, if heard by humanity, could unleash a storm the stars would never forget. This time, Earth would not forgive, and it would never forget. The silence in space was broken as Earth's fleet began to move through the darkness like a storm coming over a calm sea. While the rest of the galaxy remained unaware, or simply pretended not to see, what was happening, deep within the command centers hidden across Earth's colonies and moons, orders were already being carried out with flawless precision. For this time, there would be no delay, no hesitation, and no diplomacy to slow down justice. As soon as Lyra's voice had been heard and verified, Earth's command structure moved like a single machine, not because they were eager for war, but because something sacred had been broken, something that no law, no alliance, and no treaty could repair, the brutal attack on the innocent. To Earth, protecting the helpless had always been the line that must never be crossed. In the orbit above Mars, a dreadnought-class warship named Horizon's Wrath came online for the first time in 2 decades, its power core humming like a sleeping beast waking from a long slumber. Engineers and soldiers rushed into position, their faces calm but focused, because they all knew this mission was different. It was not about territory or resources, it was about something deeper, something older than politics. It was about protecting what was right. Admiral Chiron stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Wrath, his eyes fixed on the digital map displaying the location of the Varnak fleet that had attacked Avra. Although he said nothing for several long minutes, the crew around him waited without speaking, because they had all served under him before and they all understood that when he stared like that, it meant he was already fighting the war in his mind, planning every strike, every movement, and every message he would send through fire across the stars. Earth's allies and former enemies alike started to pick up strange activity in space, ships vanishing from known locations, cargo lanes being cleared, encrypted signals bouncing across ancient human relays that had not been used in years. While some thought it was just another drill or show of force, those who knew humanity's history felt the same cold wind in their spine, because they had seen what Earth did when it stopped talking and started preparing. On the capital world of the Galactic Council, news of the attack on Era had reached only a few ears, mostly because the Varnak had erased most of the recordings, destroyed the evidence, and silenced any survivors. The rest of the galaxy had learned to look away when the strong attacked the weak, justifying it as a misunderstanding or an unfortunate event that didn't require direct involvement. But Earth was different. For humans, every child mattered, every voice was worth saving, and every innocent life lost because others stayed silent became a reason to stand, fight, and remind the stars why humanity was feared, even though it often chose peace first. Back on Earth, in the underground halls of Command Prime, analysts studied the Varnak fleet's weaknesses, calculating the best entry points for surgical strikes, while artificial intelligence models simulated every possible outcome with millions of variables. Above all of this activity, one message kept repeating through every layer of command like a heartbeat: we strike fast, we strike hard, and we don't stop until the last innocent cry is answered. In the shattered ruins of Avra, a few survivors still hid in the underground tunnels, holding on to hope, whispering prayers to stars they could no longer see. When one of them picked up a strange signal on an old frequency and realized it was human code, their eyes filled with tears, because they knew what it meant: Earth had heard them, and help was coming. Meanwhile, the Varnak High Command laughed in their halls of bone and crystal, believing that Earth, bound by laws and a reputation for peacekeeping, would never risk its political standing or alliances over one small colony. They didn't know, and couldn't imagine, that humans were not acting through the Council, not seeking approval, and not waiting for permission to do what had to be done. They didn't know that Earth's revenge was already flying toward them in silence. The first human fleet entered Varnak-controlled space undetected using stealth drives developed during the Old Wars, slipping past patrol lines, gathering data, scanning defenses, and identifying weak points in their infrastructure. Because when humans fought back, they did not do so in anger alone, they did so with precision, patience, and purpose. Admiral Kai's voice echoed through every ship in his command as he finally gave the order, a single sentence that would become legend in the days to come: they showed no mercy to the helpless, so we shall show them what mercy looks like when it's gone. The stars then lit up, not with sunlight, not with beauty, but with fire. Every spark was a promise kept. The darkness of space, cold and eternal, became a stage for something terrible and powerful, as the human fleet, silent like shadows and deadly like storms, moved closer to their targets with the kind of focus that only comes from loss, pain, and the desire to make those who hurt the innocent understand what it means to stand against Earth when it stops being silent. The Varnak colonies were spread across 6 systems, each one armed with enough firepower to destroy a moon and guarded by ships, stations, and planetary shields. But none of them were ready for what came, because in their arrogance they believed they had destroyed not only Avra but the will of humans to fight back. They never understood that it was not fear that held Earth still, it was the weight of its patience breaking when the attack began. It started without warning, without any traditional declaration of war, because Earth was not seeking war, it was delivering justice. Justice came in silence first, in the form of data viruses planted in Varnak communication networks, turning their ships blind and deaf within seconds, crashing satellites, scrambling signals, and isolating every military outpost from one another like islands surrounded by fire. Then the missiles came, not nuclear, not crude, but advanced, silent, invisible to most Varnak sensors, built with nanotechnology and quantum targeting, slipping through shields and striking with perfect accuracy. When the first command center vanished into dust without any alarm sounding, the panic that followed did more damage to the Varnak than the weapons themselves, because fear spread faster than fire on the ground. Soldiers who had once laughed about Earth's weakness began screaming into broken radios, asking for orders that never came, because their leaders were already gone, their bases already destroyed, and their warships either crippled in orbit or crashing toward the planet like burning metal coffins. In those moments of chaos, they finally understood the difference between strength used for domination and strength held back for peace. Admiral Kai watched it all unfold from his command deck, not with joy, not with hatred, but with the cold expression of a man who had once believed in peace more than anyone and who now stood at the edge of it, forced to become the very thing he had sworn to avoid, only because the galaxy had refused to protect those who could not protect themselves. The people of Earth did not cheer when the first Varnak planet fell, because it was not a victory to celebrate. It was a message, a warning, a line drawn across the stars written in the language of fire. Across every human channel, one message was broadcast over and over again: this is not war. This is remembrance, for every child silenced on Avra, for every cry ignored in deep space. Earth's mobile command platforms then began deploying humanitarian relief fleets toward nearby neutral colonies, offering aid to those who had suffered under Ferric rule and showing the galaxy that even in its anger, humanity had not forgotten kindness, because it was never about conquering, it was about restoring balance. Where others saw an opportunity for dominance, Earth saw a duty to protect. On the Galactic Council's central world, leaders from dozens of species watched in stunned silence as reports came in showing the scale and speed of the human assault. Though many had once dismissed humans as emotional and unpredictable, they now sat in fear, realizing that Earth had never been weak, it had simply chosen not to show its strength until it was truly necessary. Some tried to argue for sanctions, some whispered about retaliation, but none of them moved, because deep down they knew that if they stood in Earth's path now, they would become part of the lesson being written in the sky. Even the most prideful races chose silence over resistance, understanding that there are moments in history when it is better to watch and remember than to speak and be erased. Back on one of the crippled Varnak moons, a single transmission escaped the chaos, sent by a young commander who had once believed the humans to be soft, who had laughed at their history and mocked their peacekeeping forces. Now his voice shook as he spoke to anyone who would listen, warning them with the last words his system allowed: "We thought they would cry, instead, they came with fire. Forgive us, for we have awakened the wrath of Earth." As that signal traveled across space, bouncing through satellites and reaching planets that had never even seen a human before, the legend of the response began to grow, not as a myth, not as fear-mongering, but as a truth carved into the stars by the actions of those who refused to stay silent when the helpless were attacked. Earth had not started this war, but it would finish it. And when the fires finally stopped burning, those who remained would tell their children not about how powerful Earth was, but about how dangerous it is to mistake silence for weakness and how one cry for help had changed the fate of the galaxy forever. Far from the burning wreckage of the Varnak colonies, deep in the uncharted regions of space, the human fleet did not slow down, because the mission was far from over. Though they had crippled the first wave of military installations and cut the backbone of Varnak power, they knew the real battle was not just about winning a war, it was about changing how the galaxy understood Earth forever. Admiral Kai stood at the edge of the command center, his hands behind his back, his eyes fixed on the rotating holographic map of the Varnak Empire, watching as red zones faded into gray, showing systems that had been silenced, defended, or overtaken. In that silence, there was a heavy truth: humanity had become what many once feared it could be, not a destroyer of worlds, but a force that brought balance through precision, purpose, and terrifying unity. The second wave of operations had a different objective, not destruction, but exposure, because Earth understood something no other species had ever mastered in war: the power of truth. Human AI systems began unlocking secret files from Varnak databases, the hidden crimes of the Empire slowly surfacing, revealing stories of labor camps, forbidden experiments, silenced colonies, and entire species that had been erased from memory just to strengthen Varnak dominance. It was not enough to defeat the enemy with weapons. Earth wanted the galaxy to see what had been hidden behind diplomacy, money, and power. Broadcasts were sent out not just from Earth's fleet, but from captured Varnak communication towers, showing proof of horrors long denied, plain recordings of children crying in detention stations, prisoners speaking in trembling voices, and soldiers admitting what they had done under orders that no one had dared question until now. Suddenly, the galaxy began to shift. On neutral worlds, people watched the images in shock, unable to look away, realizing that the war Earth had launched was not a war of expansion but a rebellion against fear itself, a message to every species that no empire, no matter how powerful, could stand unpunished if it ever chose to harm the innocent again. Back in the Varnak High Command, what remained of their leaders sat around broken consoles and blinking emergency lights, unable to agree on a response, because fear had cracked their unity. The once proud officers who had laughed at Earth now whispered about surrender, knowing that Earth had not even used half its fleet and still they had lost everything they had built over 100 years in less than a week. Some tried to call for help from allies, but those messages went unanswered, because even the Varnak's allies knew better than to interfere now. One by one, support faded, not from loyalty, but from fear, because everyone was watching Earth, wondering what it would do next, and no one wanted to be next in line to face the fury that had already shattered stars in the outer systems. Captain Rena, leading one of Earth's secondary fleets, received new orders, not to destroy the final communication hub in the Varnak core world, but to take control of it and send a single message, one that would be heard by every living Varn and possibly every leader in the galaxy. Though her hands trembled slightly as she read the transmission, her voice did not shake when she stood before the camera, dressed not in armor but in a simple uniform with the Earth Alliance symbol glowing on her chest. In a calm, steady voice, she spoke words that were not threats, but promises. This is Earth. We did not want war. We did not seek conquest. We only asked for peace, but when you attacked the helpless, you left us no choice. From this day forward, Earth will no longer wait for the galaxy to act. We will protect the innocent. We will punish those who target the weak. And we will remember everything. The message echoed across space, translated into every major language, saved, shared, and broadcast again. In its quiet tone, it carried a warning that no one could ignore, because it did not sound like anger, it sounded like a law. Every pirate, dictator, warlord, and corrupt government official across the stars suddenly realized that Earth had just become something the galaxy had never known before, a guardian without mercy. On Earth, where families still mourned the dead of Avra, where cities held memorials, and children lit candles under the stars, the people understood that their pain had not been wasted. For the first time in galactic history, those who harmed without consequence had been brought to justice by a force that did not forgive without reason. As Earth's fleets returned from their missions, escorted by silence and watched by billions, they carried no flags of victory, no banners of conquest, only the weight of what had been done and what it had meant. In every human heart, there was the same unspoken vow, that this would never happen again, not while Earth still stood among the stars. Somewhere in the ruins of a fallen outpost, buried under metal and dust, a small recording device played one final message, a child's voice from Avra crying for help. Though the voice faded into static, the stars had already heard it, and Earth had answered. Now, the galaxy would never forget.